Alaska, gateway to the gold-glutted creeks of the Klondike. Their task, to build a railroad through the rugged mountain barrier which separates Yukon from the sea. Skagway, 1,000 miles north of Vancouver, is located at the tip of Lynn Canal on the Alaskan Panhandle. A community of 750 Alaskans, Skagway still retains the flavor of past days when thousands of gold-hungry men stormed its beaches and headed for the Klondike. But while those days are gone forever, an important part of the past remains, for Skagway today is still the gateway to the Yukon. The railroad is its main industry. All types of goods are freighted north from Vancouver to Yukon Territory via Skagway and the White Pass and Yukon route. Although the railroad is a Canadian company, 22 miles of its track are located in the state of Alaska, with its shops and railway headquarters in Skagway. It's hard to find a Skagway family that doesn't have a father, brother, or uncle working on the line. And it's been that way ever since 1898. The hush of bygone days is everywhere in Skagway. Remnants of the past bring to the present long-forgotten dreams. World War II burst upon the scene, but like the stampede of '98, it too faded away, leaving its marks beside those of the gold rush. Tex Rickard, Jack London, Robert Service, and many others passed this way on their way to the north. In those days, Soapy Smith and his gang of gold rush untouchables ran the town. Gold bought a drink or a waltz with a dance hall girl. To serve the gold fields, a reliable railroad was needed. But who could drive steel through the White Pass, which offered nothing but seemingly impossible grades and cliffs of solid granite? Construction began May 27, 1898, after a chance meeting in Skagway between railroad builder Sir Thomas Tancred and Canadian engineer Michael J. Heaney. Sir Thomas obtained British financial backing, and the White Pass and Yukon Railway was no longer a dream, but an engineering challenge that would demand everything Big Mike Heaney had to offer, and more besides. With nothing but horses, shovels, black powder, and men, the right-of-way was blasted and hacked through the pass. The railway was one of the most difficult ever engineered, as massive grades and buttresses of solid rock barred the way. 35,000 men were employed on construction. Among them were doctors, lawyers, scholars, and ministers, making the most educated group of construction workers ever assembled. Attracted north by the rush for gold, many landed in Skagway dead broke. With wages earned on the railroad, they purchased their outfits and headed for the Klondike. On July 21st, 1898, the first train was placed in service and operated a distance of 4 miles. Today, the crowds have gone and the track moved from the main street. The shriek of locomotive whistles, billowing steam, and the smell of coal dust became part of Skagway life. And in August 1900, the first train rolled into Whitehorse, giving Yukon Territory an outlet to the sea. Today, the White Pass freighter Clifford J. Rogers brings Yukon-bound freight from Vancouver. Yukon's economy and continued development is extremely important to this historic American town, as its payrolls are directly connected to the state of business in Canada's northern areas. Yukon's silver, lead, and zinc, and British Columbia's asbestos are shipped out. Commercial and domestic goods, mining machinery, and oil search equipment are shipped in. goods are shipped in metal containers which hold up to 5 tons of freight. These unique shipping units eliminate the need for boxcars and endless customs checks, as each container is sealed in Vancouver and travels across the Panhandle in bond. When necessary, heaters are placed in containers to protect perishable freight from winter temperatures. Other goods are carried in electrically operated cooler containers designed to hold their loads to a predetermined temperature. Number 1 northbound freight is ready to start the long climb to the summit. Early each morning, railroad patrolmen check every foot of track to ensure the daily northbound freight will not be delayed. Every winter, between 400 and 500 inches of snow falls in the White Pass, creating drifts across the right-of-way. When a drift is located, information is flashed to the Skagway dispatcher, who immediately orders out the rotary fleet. 2 rotary snowplows are on constant standby. A call brings out the crews, and in minutes, the rotary fleet is assembled. The rotary plows are pushed by 2 steam locomotives, which are retained for their ability to deliver full power at slow speeds. Despite the fierce storms, howling winds, and sub-zero temperatures, the rotary crews have an enviable record for keeping the trains rolling on schedule throughout the stormy Arctic winters. While the line uses diesel locomotives for its main power, a few water towers are retained to service the steam engines. Because of the sub-zero temperatures, the towers are heated to prevent the water from freezing. In 1901, Samuel Houghton Graves, the company's first president, said of the rotary men, "Clearly, it's no place for a weakling. Your oil cups freeze, and your feet freeze, and you've been on your legs for 48 hours, but you must stick to it like a bulldog and get the trains through. And you do, if you're a White Pass rotary man." And it's still that way today. The rotary plow cannot move by itself, but is pushed into the drifts by the 2 steam locomotives. The locomotives shunt the rotary back and forth as commanded by the rotary chief, who uses a series of whistle signals to make his orders known to the locomotive engineers. The rotary plow weighs 130 tons, and the total weight of the fleet, including the locomotives, is over 400 tons. The giant wheel which slices through the snow is controlled from the rotary pilot house deck. Weighing over 6 tons, the wheel turns at 120 revolutions per minute and is powered by a separate steam engine located in the rotary unit. Through years of experience, the rotary men maintain perfect coordination as they hurl this mass of weight and power at the huge drifts. When the pass is clear, northbound freight leaves Skagway on its scheduled daily run to Whitehorse. In winter, travel is confined to local passengers and railroad personnel traveling between Whitehorse and Skagway. Retired white passers, like all railroad men, maintain a lively interest in the train schedules and the latest roundhouse gossip. Vic Sparks, now a well-known artist, recalls the days when he shoveled coal and snow as a White Pass rotary man.
One of the biggest jobs for the firemen, of course the engineers helped once in a while too, was to keep the tanks full of water. Well, that was the biggest problem. There would be 2 engines on the rotary boat. All the firemen had to get out and shovel snow, open the tanks and start in as soon as you had something to eat in the morning, and you'd shovel till you got tired and come in, and then at night you'd probably have 10 or 12 inches of water. Take a little nap and then keep on all night. Well, about the 4th, 5th day, got pretty well tired out, so I skirmished around in the back of the tank and found a piece of canvas and some boards and had a hammer and a saw. And I saw, looking out the window, I saw the snow drifting. The wind was blowing pretty hard. It was about 35 below, and the wind blowing, drifting along on top. So I rigged up a chute from the top of the snowbank into the top of the water tank. And it worked beautifully. I'd sit there in the cab, and once in a while it'd get piled up, and I'd go out and poke it down. One of the firemen didn't see me out there for quite a while, so he came up. He said, "What are you doing?" Well, I said, "I give up. To hell with it. I ain't going to do work anymore."
From sea level at Skagway, the train climbs over 2,800 feet in only 21 miles. The average grade to the summit is 2.6%, with the steepest nearly 4%. The train is assisted up these grades by a helper diesel, which is from the rear. Two or more diesel locomotives are combined to power each freight train. Each locomotive weighs 81 tons and is powered with an 8-cylinder diesel engine which produces 800 horsepower. The train passes Dead Horse Gulch, named after the thousands of pack animals which slipped and fell to their deaths during the mad stampede to the Klondike. By making repeated trips, each gold seeker packed a ton of supplies and equipment over the boulder-strewn trail that zigzagged for 40 miles to the summit of the pass. The back-breaking toil, the tangle of men, supplies, dogs, and the stench of rotting horseflesh are experiences etched forever in the memory of those who were there, capable of total recall, as if it happened only yesterday. Finally, George Brackett constructed a wagon trail, and the continuing flood of stampeders were glad to pay Brackett's high tolls to move their equipment by horse and wagon. The men and women who passed this way in '97 and '98 opened up the Yukon and created the need for the White Pass, which is still the only Canadian railway operating above the 60th parallel. After helping the train over 21 miles of steep mountain grades, the helper diesel locomotive is dropped. From here on, the train proceeds on normal power supplied by twin diesel units. At this point, the train crosses the international boundary between Alaska and British Columbia. Having cleared the pass of snow, the rotary fleet pulls off the main line at Fraser Loop. Now, the northbound freight is on her own. Lake Bennett, BC, where passengers and crews stop for lunch. At Bennett, the sourdoughs built boats and rafts to float their equipment through the chain of lakes to the Yukon River and down north to the Klondike. All that remains of the past is the church, built by the gold seekers at the turn of the century. Rail construction reached Bennett in July 1899, and scheduled train service between Bennett and Skagway was started immediately. Today, train crews and passengers enjoy a northern home-style meal in the railroad dining room before continuing their journey. When the warm rays of the northern spring sun penetrate the ice and snow, the lake ice thunders and cracks, splitting into infinite glittering shapes, to be borne away by the growing current. With the sun come thousands of tourists in search of adventure on the Trail of '98. And conductor Bill Beitinger has a story to delight everyone, whether he be young or old.
Then we'd come along here along Lake Bennett and different peaks along here, like I'd say, well, they'd say, what's the name of that mountain? Well, I'd say that's Mentor's Peak, or Hillary's Hill, or something like that, you know. I'd give them a name as I go along. They didn't know the difference, you know, so I give them a name, and we'd go along. And a slide zone, I called one there, I called Talbot Slide. That was the conductor's name, old Talbot. Now, I had a tour son here. He come up on a trip, and then 5 years later, he come back. And he come up to me and says, hello there, Bill. You don't remember me? And I says, no, I don't. He said, I remember you. You remember we was on the railroad and you made a kind of a sharp turn? And I asked you, what was that? And I said, well, that's a square corner. I said, the only railroad in the world that goes around square corners. And 5 years later, he sprung that on me. And I just had some answer. Geez, I got a bang out of that. He said, 5 years ago, you told me it was a square corner, and they never forgot it.
Having left Bennett 67 miles to the south, the train arrives at Carcross on the northern tip of the lake. Here, Samuel Graves, with Canadian and American dignitaries, drove the last spike on July 29, 1900. At Carcross, Canadian Customs check off each container by serial number. When all seals are found intact, the train continues its journey to Whitehorse, 43 miles to the north. Ahead lies Yukon's 207,000 square miles of virtually untapped resources. During the last 10 years, Yukon has produced $12 to $15 million annually in silver, lead, zinc, and gold. Drilling crews are probing for oil, and every summer, thousands of tourists travel north to enjoy Yukon's colorful frontier life. Whitehorse, northern terminus of the White Pass in Yukon. Nearby, the last of the stern wheelers rest on the banks of the Yukon River. Until 1956, they steamed between Whitehorse and Dawson City. Whitehorse, once the home of Robert W. Service, where he wrote The Shooting of Dan McGrew. The city is now the capital and transportation center of the Yukon, with a population of over 5,000. As soon as the train arrives, forklift trucks deliver containers directly to the stores. The temperature-controlled container is the key to this unique transportation system, as it provides Yukon supermarkets with produce as fresh as that obtainable in southern Canada. Containers for onward shipment to distant Yukon points are loaded directly onto trucks. They are then dispatched to Dawson City, Mayo, Watson Lake, and all highway communities. While Yukon freight is being distributed, warehouse crews load containers with asbestos, which is trucked to Whitehorse over the Alaska Highway from Cassiar in northern BC. Pallet loads of silver, lead, and zinc are trucked to railhead from Elsa via the Dawson-Mayo Highway and loaded onto railroad flat cars. There are 550 containers in constant use. Almost without pause, the flat cars are reloaded with Yukon southbound freight, already containerized, custom sealed, and stockpiled beside the loading track. As soon as the last container is cinched down, number 2 southbound freight is ready for its scheduled morning departure for Yukon's panhandle port of Skagway. Board. Every morning at 8:15, the conductor gives the highball. The air brakes release, and the White Pass in Yukon starts a new page in its long and colorful history, and another day of service to the Yukon and the North.